The arrival of head coach Sean Payton has energized the Denver Broncos after a disastrous 2022 season. Can he get Russell Wilson on track, and is there enough on this roster for a playoff run? It's Broncos Day, and we're breaking them down from every angle today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day. And, of course, a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, good morning to you, and good morning to everyone, with the exception of the bozo graphics person at ESPN who sent the Boston almost did the impossible high five emoji. No team has come back from 0-3 down in a playoff series.
And they still haven't.
Did you see that tweet?
No.
Brother.
I didn't see it.
Just the saddest display. The Celtics nearly did this is from @SportsCenter. Celtics nearly did the impossible with a high five emoji and a clover. And then the insert tweet is Boston. The Celtics almost became the first team in NBA history to overcome an 0-3 series deficit. 0-151. Losing by 19 at home doesn't feel like almost
Game 7,
doing anything.
Should have lost in Game 6, but, you know.
It's neither here nor there.
So
good morning to everybody except for whoever thought was like, yeah, we have this stigma of being totally radically biased for Boston sports. Let's go ahead and send that congratulatory tweet. Maybe they'll hang a banner at TD Garden for forced to Game 7 in the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals.
Only the Colts would do that, right? AFC finalists.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a real thing that's happened.
It's really there, right? That banner is really there. Okay. Well, welcome, Broncos country. Welcome.
I can't imagine there were too many Colts fans who transplanted with Peyton when he left for Denver, so I don't think we've insulted anybody.
Oh, I'm sure I'm sure there are. I mean, how many like Brady fans went to Tampa? Like that happened.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm sure of it. There are Broncos fans.
Apologies to the Broncos fans who tuned in, who are actually just Peyton Manning fans who follow Peyton and the Broncos and are upset that we made fun of the AFC.
You know, Peyton does a lot of like promo stuff with Denver, right? Like, wasn't he on? He's been on like their schedule release. Wouldn't you feel some type of way about that if you're a Colts fan? I would. Like
if you were Peyton Manning and you were ready to keep playing, wouldn't you feel some type of way about being dismissed?
Surely. But I'm just saying, if I were a Colts fan, I would. Not like
cold dagger of truth cuts both ways, right?
Yeah. Listen, I saw Bruce Smith play for the Washington. I saw Thurman Thomas in a Dolphins jersey.
And he said the only reason he picked the Dolphins was to play the Bills twice.
Yeah. It's real stuff. So, and we got Brandon Shell now, to go with Trent Sherfield.
Right.
It's
right.
The circle continues. All right, let's talk about the Denver
in the NFL.
Denver Broncos. For those of you who may be new to the series, what we've done is we've taken a day. We study the entire football team. We watch the film. We categorize every single player on the roster into different buckets. And what we're going to do is talk about the offense, the defense, and then Kyle and I individually did the research, and we put them into buckets. And we have some players that we have to come to consensus on that we didn't see them exactly the same way, at least when we did it independently. So that's coming up in segment 3. But Kyle, Denver Broncos offense, Sean Payton is here. Russell Wilson, a big investment there, a disastrous first year in Denver, but I think a lot of hope for what he can do in year 2 with a much improved coaching staff. We would presume with Sean Payton taking over for Nathaniel Hackett. The floor is yours to start talking about this Broncos offense.
Yeah, so I think this conversation has to start with coaching. Just a super disjointed effort. all around.
Good word choice.
This football team last year, I watched the first game against Seattle. I watched the last game against the Chargers, and then I watched a game against the Chiefs, and then I watched the first game against the Raiders, were the games that I watched. So, offensively, you're going no huddle in the opener against Seattle, and Russ is trying to call a play at the line of scrimmage, and nobody can hear him, and they just run a play. There's a real lack of consistency with Russ himself and his execution. I think there's a lot of stuff we could get into with Russell Wilson versus what he was in Seattle, who he was last year, what you're hoping he can be this year with Sean Payton, and I think that's obviously such a critical component of the success of this team this year. But I look at the talent that they had last year and recognizing that there were some players that were hurt. Javonte Williams got hurt. Tim Patrick got hurt. Garrett Bolles got hurt. I understand you had some players that went down and missed some time. The talent on this roster was much better than what they showcased offensively last year. And for me, the number one culprit of that was just there's no rhyme or reason why we're doing half the stuff we're doing offensively. It was painfully obvious to me.
Yeah, our last two teams were the Patriots and Broncos, right? And what a a succession of offensive struggles those two studies were. I think that's a great place to start the conversation, and you would think Sean Payton would be able to really stabilize all of that. What I really like about the makeup of this offensive roster is how we've reestablished this offensive line. You know, there's been injuries for it. They've had a lot of, just a ton of issues at right tackle, right? Year over year, just injuries, players not panning out, failed signings, and then they go out and get Mike McGlinchey. They paid him quite a bit of money, but at least there's a baseline there that you feel comfortable with. And I'd say the same thing about Ben Powers, who comes over to be one of the starting guards, to go with Garrett Bolles, who's one of your best players, to go with Lloyd Cushenberry, who's a developing young center, and of course Quinn Miners, who's been really promising at guard.
That's good last year.
And so I think the floor, really good moments for sure. The floor of this offensive line, with the additions of Powers and McGlinchey, looks a lot better than it has in a while, in my opinion.
I guess my question for you is this, because I agree. I think, drops aside, Jerry Jeudy is on the cusp of a breakout.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It feels like the skill set is all there. Obviously, Mims is a vertical component that you're adding to this with a bigger-bodied vertical guy like Courtland Suton, who can be more of an X and a possession receiver in the middle of the field if you need to. Greg Dulcich, the tight end, was very promising once he came into the lineup in the second half of the year as well. I look at the offensive line, and I think about specifically Ben Powers. And my question for you is Ben Powers X million dollars more of an upgrade over Dalton Risner?
Has Risner signed anywhere yet?
Not yet.
I think with Ben Powers, if you get anything, you get some of the injury stuff with Dalton Risner had seemingly been problematic, where I don't know that that's been there with Powers. And we don't know what Risner has signed for yet. But they gave Powers the bag, right?
It was over $13 million.
And I think we probably thought of Risner when we started free agency as somebody who could flirt with 10. It's going to be June before he signs. I think it's unlikely he touches that.
$3 to $5 million a year.
Yeah, maybe some incentives baked in.
A 1 year, $3 to $5 million contract is what I bet he signs for.
I think if you want to look at it through that lens, you can certainly be critical. But if he winds up being a reliable starter every single week, that's something that they need. But I think there's a fair point to be made there.
So the other place I want to go is this. I like Ben Powers. I gave him a quality starter evaluation. I was just surprised at the dollar amount versus what the rest of the interior looked like last year for Denver. I didn't think Ben Powers was like a head and shoulders upgrade that you would pay that kind of dollars for. I didn't think they were that urgent to get that piece amidst what they have as long as everybody else is healthy. But I like how it fits with McGlinchey, his strength is what? Pushing the run game.
Yeah, run blame. Blocking.
Miners, road grader.
Yep.
Garrett Bolles, super athletic, but can get on top of you in a hurry. Ben Powers is a bully in the run game. You're getting Javonte Williams back. You brought in Samaje Perine to be the bat. Like, we're going to be physical running the ball, right? And what I get excited about for that is the ability to run the ball physically. And they have low-key remodeled this entire tight end room, too. I mean, Dulcich, and then they brought in Manhertz and Troutman. They traded for Troutman during the draft weekend, and Manhertz is a blocking type. They're going to be really physical in the box, and I think they need to be, because I felt last year was the worst-case scenario for Russell Wilson with what people wanted for a really long time for Russ to be versus what Seattle kind of felt Russ actually was and how they handled and coached him. A whole let Russ cook thing and people getting frustrated on how much they ran the ball. And then they got away from that last year and it was not good. It's like sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't. And I would rather Russell Wilson be a quarterback who's handcuffed a little bit by being a quarterback on a more run-heavy volume offense than just unquestioning giving him the keys to the car and we're going to throw the ball 35, 38 times a game, because you saw a lot of missed reads and just plays where Russell's bailing out of pockets and trying to make too much happen. And like from just a pure fundamental execution standpoint, he could have been a lot better last year on his own amidst the other litany of issues that this Broncos offense had and how bad the coaching was. There were concepts that were there that he did not execute himself. So I love the fact that the DNA of this offense now, between the remade tight end room and the investments that they did make up front, and Javonte Williams coming back healthy, gives you the ability to say, look, we're going to pound the rock. Russ, you're going to complement off of that. The hard pill, I guess, for Broncos fans maybe to swallow off of that is, well, we didn't trade what we traded and pay Russell what we paid him to be a compliment. He kind of goes in that Dak Prescott bucket where Dak's always been best when Dallas runs the ball heavy too. Mm-hmm.
This might be a hot take. I'm not sure it is, but this group of skill players on this offense is probably the deepest that we've ever seen Sean Payton have.
I think that's accurate.
I really like Dulcich, Kyle. I mean, what a fun player he emerged as. You know, like, you got to his tape at UCLA, you saw him at the Senior Bowl, and then just very quickly kind of found himself in this offense and made some big-time plays. I think there's a nice ceiling there for him to develop into, but that's just scratching the surface. You mentioned Javonte Williams with a really good complementary piece in Samaje Perine, who can run it, he can catch it, he can block. Suton, Jeudy, Patrick's healthy, Marvin Mims, Kendall Hilton's been a nice depth player, Hamler has speed, Callaway knows the system. I mean, this looks good. This looks good on paper. I mean, it's just
Callaway's
about coming
been
together.
No worse than what, wide receiver 3 when he's been with Sean?
Seems like it, yeah. A lot of high-level moments there, too.
Yeah.
All right, well, we will shift gears to the defense here in just a moment, but first need to tell you about Built Bar. You know, I just ate one right here. The birthday cake puff, just had one before we started. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want a bunch of sugar and calories, well, check out the best tasting protein bars on the planet, and that's a Built Bar. You got to try this. Trust me on this. They're healthy. They're delicious. They're delicious because they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They come in great flavors like birthday cake, like churro, like brownie batter. And they're like eating a candy bar, but they're good for you, like we mentioned. In fact, I'll tell you that this Built Bar right here that I just ate has 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and only 6 grams of sugar. You can't beat that. Check them out. Go to Built.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON15. That'll get you 15% off of your next order. Or you can also head on over to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, pick up a box off the shelf, and try them. And if you do, we got a feeling you're going to thank us later.
Defensively, Joe, you gave me the ball first last time, and I ran with it. So I'm going to let you have the ball here to go wherever you want to go defensively for the Denver Broncos.
I normally want to start with the front, but I don't for Denver because I feel like I'm excited about their back end. Pat Surtain, right?
Stud.
Spoiler alert, we both have him as a roster cornerstone, right? Very quickly emerging as one of the best corners in the entire NFL. But you got another franchise cornerstone in Justin Simmons, who's an absolute stud at safety. Kareem Jackson feels ageless to me, right? I mean, not that he's everything he was 4 or 5 years ago, but there's still that ability to trigger and tackle that is really, really outstanding. And he's played a lot of football for a number of years. And, Caden Stearns behind him has gotten some opportunity and looks good. And I just feel good about the safety position. But I think the guy here in this secondary that really caught my eye in a positive way, especially for the in-season growth, was a rookie from last year, and that's Damari Mathis, who, I think he's going to be a nice starter opposite of Surtain for this defense, and I really enjoyed his development last year, especially kind of struggled his first taste of action, tough situation, but stabilized his play quite a bit, and so I've got a lot to say about the rest of the unit, but with it being the first talking point, what I wanted to get into, I really like the secondary.
And not to sleep on Quan Williams either.
Nice slot, yeah.
I think as a nickel player. So, I mean, between Caden Stearns and Kareem Jackson, you have 3 safety with Justin Simmons that you can run with. And then when you're going to want to go coverage, Quan Williams can be a really effective player. So, I agree. I think the makeup of the back end is pretty nice, and it's just going to be a question of, how much more growth do we see from Mathis and Stearns this season upcoming. That's going to determine the ceiling of the group. But anytime you got 2 cornerstones in one unit, you're in good shape.
Especially a guy like Surtain. We talk about math changers, and because you have Surtain, you can ask him to play man coverage and zone it up with the rest of your guys. And that really means a lot for how you can space the field. And so I think Surtain's at that level now where he can do that and really improve your spacing on defense.
Yeah, just put him on the backside, right? Turn it into 10 on 10 and only have 2/3 of the field to work with. And that he has that kind of lockdown ability, and the instincts are really, really good. And you feel like he's got enough between technique and once his hips are flipped and he's carrying you, you're not super afraid of him getting beat vertically without having vertical help over top of him. So that really changes things because now the box count's different. You can roll Kareem Jackson down lower to the box and not feel like you have to go split safeties, and Simmons can kind of cheat over top, and Mathis can be a little bit more instinctive, I guess, or aggressive, knowing that he has vertical help over the top of him. So, yeah, that trickle-down effect will be good for run support for Denver and for the young corner on the other side.
So, looking at this front 7, I'm excited about Baron Browning. And I know that we were both really high on him coming out, but to see how they're starting to deploy him, playing as a rush player, playing in space and coverage, I feel like they're utilizing him to his strengths, and I think he's got a chance to be a really dynamic playmaker for this defense. And they need him to be because I have some questions about the pass rush here. I mean, Randy Gregory, I think there's some exciting moments there, but consistency has been a major issue. I mean, he's played over 500 snaps in a season one time in his entire career. It's 517. Nick Benito, a young player. They need for Browning and Gregory to really make it happen off the edge.
Gregory was really good in the first month of the season, though.
And then I think that's all he played.
Well, no, he came back and played 34 snaps in weeks 14 and 15.
The guy's availability, for whatever reason, it's an issue with him.
He's
31 years old.
If he's available.
He's never been available. So
if he's available based off what he showed in the front half of the season, I think he's really good. And I don't think we should gloss over Jonathan Cooper from Ohio State either.
Nice depth player. Yeah.
He's become a really nice complementary rusher as a stand-up rush player for them.
Toolsy, too.
Yeah, good burst. A little bit more condensed, not as long as Browning, Benito, or Gregory, but he's somebody who's showcased nice fluidity and then a nice little complement of power to come back off of that. So, obviously, this team is banking on Browning and Benito taking steps because they traded Bradley Chubb at the trade deadline, and that was a big transition. And Browning had high flash moments. Gregory, when he's healthy, looked phenomenal. Cooper's had high flash moments. So I think this is a largely young group that I think there's enough competitiveness here, and I think there's enough talent here where I actually like this group. I don't like it like I like the secondary, but I like this group nonetheless. I actually have more questions about the interior defensively for Denver. For me, it's DJ Jones, and like they lost a lot of bodies out of this front from last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I got some questions about the depth that you have. Like Mike Purcell's a fine player, but I don't think you're excited about him taking a bunch of snaps. And Henningsen, as a second-year player, was always a little bit of a developmental toolsy type player. Zach Allen I like, but I don't like him for what you paid for him. It's kind of the same boat with their 3 prize free agent additions. But that's the cost of doing business in the world of free agency, right? Is you're going to pay 20% over market just because they're on the open market.
I'm glad you got into that because I think that's one of my criticisms towards the makeup of this roster. When you look at, I'll give you a bunch of players here: Zach Allen, Randy Gregory, Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey. 4 contracts, 4 of your biggest contracts. I don't think those are good value contracts at all, and you have a lot tied up in those players.
Can I put Bradley Chubb back on the board here and say, would you rather have Bradley Chubb and not have one of these players, or would you rather have the first-round pick?
Yeah, I'd rather have Chubb.
And not have Chubb.
No, I'd rather
to free
have
the
Chubb.
money to bring these players in.
I would rather have Chubb over Zach Allen or Randy.
And
Gregory.
then they use the first-round pick for Sean Payton.
I would have done business differently. But I mean, like look at their biggest contracts: Russ Wilson.
All right, you're gonna make me. I'm gonna float around and produce.
Mike
this
McGlinchey, Garrett Bolles. Like, okay, good one there. Justin Simmons. All right, we can vibe with that. Zach Allen, Courtland Suton. I mean, Courtland Sutton's had like one big year.
No Courtland Sutton slander allowed, please.
I loved him coming out, but I wish there was more to show there. Tim Patrick, DJ Jones is a $10 million player. Like, those are your $10 million plus per players.
From a cap perspective.
Yes, average annual value.
Oh, I'm just looking at this year's cap hits. This year's cap hits: Russ 22, Courtland Sutton 18-2, Simmons 18-1, Garrett Bolles 17-8, Gregory 16, DJ Jones 13, Tim Patrick 11. Man, they really put the bunny on the back on the McGlinchey deal, didn't they? His cap hit this year is $6 million.
Yeah, they're tied up for 3 years there for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the good news is, I mean, they have a pretty talented football team. I think there's some missed opportunities with some of the contracts they've handed out over the last few years, and some of the investments that they've made in resources that they got to be right on some of this stuff for this to work out. I mean, especially in a very competitive division and a very competitive conference.
Well, let's give them their flowers then still. For them to end up getting back Cam Fleming on a 1-year, $3 million deal with incentives, I think was a tremendous ad for them, because I had big-time questions about the tackle depth. And I don't love the depth in general of the offensive line, but to get Cam Fleming back, and that happened like last week, on a 1-year, 3+ conditions, I think is a really, really nice development for them, because I think he could probably be a utility guy who swings all over the place and gives you a 6th guy you feel really good about.
That's an interesting pivot. We started talking defense, we got into contracts, and now we're back to offensive line.
Okay, the Broncos rookie defender who makes the biggest impact this season is blank.
You'd think maybe Drew Sanders, but I feel like Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton are sort of stable players in front of them, but I would want to tap into Drew Sanders and that athleticism that he brings, which I think is more than Jewell and Singleton, and see what I can get out of him. I'll go with Drew Sanders.
And they last year with Avero did quite a few overload fronts where they mug both of those guys up into interior gaps.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more often than not, they drop those guys out of there. But to have a player like Sanders, who I think the low-hanging fruit was to look at what they've had success with Baron Browning, but I look at the third down and long stuff that they did with Singleton and Jewell last year, where they mugged them up and overloaded 3 guys on the other side of the center. and you're going to turn the center and you're going to ask a back to pick up one of those players. Well, now if that player that actually comes is Drew Sanders through the A-gap away from the center turn, I think he could have a lot of success as a stack linebacker who's actually a third down linebacker who's rushing A-gaps if Vance Joseph carries over some of those same concepts that the Broncos used last year with these players. So I'd be inclined to agree with you. I think Sanders is probably the best aligned. I do think Riley Moss is probably your third outside corner. So if Mathis takes a step back, or if Surtain or Mathis gets banged up, I think Moss would come in and would be much better served on the outside than in the slot. So I think there's a pathway for Riley to be an impactful player, but I think Sanders as a role player, particularly on third downs with what they did with these guys last year, I think you get a more dynamic version of that with Drew Sanders.
Are we ready to come to consensus here as we continue this conversation?
Yeah, we got some big ones, so we're gonna put our brains together and see if we can't come to consensus on our discrepancies here as we bring this episode of Locked On NFL Scouting to a close. Joe, I'll go ahead and put up the depth chart for everybody to assess. We have 3 players, correct?
Powers, Sutton, and Gregory?
I'm going to be honest. I don't feel very good about my leverage in 2 of these 3.
I feel good about. I felt pretty good coming into this. So
I bet you do. Where do you want to start?
Wherever you do. Wherever you do.
Well, I feel like my best case is Ben Powers. So let's start with Ben Powers.
Okay, that's probably the one that I'm willing. Okay, all right. I think it's a good spot to come from.
Okay, so Ben Powers, the last 2 seasons, has been starting guard for the Baltimore Ravens. Was kind of a half starter in 2020. Hardly played his rookie season in 2019. He's played over 1,900 snaps the last 2 seasons for the Baltimore Ravens. The power is plenty evident. He's 6'4", 310, coming out of Oklahoma. He was part of that rock-solid offensive line that played with Kyler, right, and had all those studs on it with Creed Humphrey. And I just think there is a baseline level of protection that we have seen, and I do think he is a quality run blocker. So if I put those 2 pieces of the puzzle together, I say I think he's adequate as a pass protector, but I think he really hangs his hat in run blocking. I would give him quality starter tag.
I think he's a sufficient starter. I gave him an adequate starter grade. I don't know if he's a high impact starter though. I think he's good. Is he a great player? I think that's where I came in and had questions about it.
Okay.
They're
He doesn't
paying
have
him
to be
like
a great.
he is.
If he doesn't have to be a great player, he just needs to be a quality starter.
I don't know, man. I think he got 13 per. I thought he was probably in line to get about half of that.
If you told me he got 10, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Because of free agency, but he really is probably a $7 or $8 million a year guard.
Did you think he was going to get more or less than Risner before it started? I thought it was going to be very close.
I thought Risner was going to get more.
Okay. Hey, can I give you a pivot real quick while we're doing this? For any Broncos fans that are watching on YouTube and they're looking at the depth chart, I had a name that I wanted to ask you about, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
If Quinn Miners plays the way he did last year again this year, and we do this exercise next summer, is he a blue for you?
Yeah, he'll be blue.
Yes.
I thought about it now. I did.
Likewise. Just kind of want to see one more year.
Yeah.
Of really good play. But Quinn Miners right now graded as an adequate starter, but the arrow is pointed up on him big time. I really, really like this team.
I'm gonna meet you on Powers because I don't think that's gonna be true for the next 2.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but that's fine. I get your argument for Randy Gregory. Let's go to Randy Gregory.
Okay.
Your argument is he's never available. He's not playing a lot of snaps.
correct. And he's going to be 31 years old this year.
But my question is, but what about when he is available?
Give him the blue. Hey, he's the most snaps he's ever played in the season is 522, and that's 2018. In fact, he's only had 477's the next highest, and then he's never played more than 270. If you told me you get 16 or 17 games out of him, put the blue label on. I just have too big of a sample size of that.
He's played more than 12 once.
Was that his 5? Was that 2018?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? He was awesome that year.
Right. I'm not debating when he's on the field. He's a nice player. And they're paying him handsomely. 5 year, $70 million deal.
Have there been any other examples of this in this exercise for us?
Where
that we have deducted a player because of availability and not because of skill? I'm just making sure that we're focused on the right things if we're going to do this, because I get your point.
Okay, well, I get your point too, right? I get that. I can understand that.
All right, well, let's do the thing. You met me on Ben Powers. I'll meet you on Randy Gregory. We'll put him as an adequate starter. And let's hope that he plays.
Field, he's a blue. Right.
Yes. Let's hope he plays a lot. Okay, which brings us to Courtland Sutton's our last guy.
Okay. I like Courtland Sutton a lot.
I like Courtland a lot.
I do
a lot.
I like him a ton. The impact is questionable. You could tie a lot of that to quarterback play. He had 1,100 yards in 2019 and never more than 829 in any other season.
Right.
And like the touchdown totals aren't super high either. 14 for his entire career. Again, I think a lot of that's on the quarterback.
I think a ton of it's on the quarterback.
Wait. I might talk myself into this. The impact that he's capable of making is that of a quality starter. I can't hold this against him. It's not his fault that he's had like the crappiest quarterbacks ever. Okay, I'll come up on this. I'll come up on this. He's still young, 27 years old. I'll come up.
Right. So and you're obviously you're hoping that now that he is 2 years removed, I guess 3 years removed from that rehab from 2020, right? When he went down in the first game.
Yeah, that was 20. Yep.
That the shelf life that he has to be at his physical peak is dwindling, but you hope that you get it this year because he's never really been like a big time separation guy. I know he's a little bit more limited as far as like a route runner. He's more of a big body down the field, not great separator, but I mean, he did have almost 3 yards average separation on targets last year, according to Next Gen Stats.
Well, I think a lot about, and I don't want to get too crazy with this, but I think about how Sean Payton was able to maximize Michael Thomas. And
okay. I see where you're going, though.
Yeah, I mean, he can heat him up for sure with that.
Okay, so if there's anybody that is concerned about separation for Courtland Sutton, can I give you some names?
Sure.
These are names that Courtland Sutton had more average separation per target than in 2022. Are you ready for these names?
Got a feeling they're going to be pretty good. Okay.
So we have... I'm going to skip the first 5 because they're objectively bad players, and we know that. DK Metcalf, 2.3 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. George Pickens, 2.4 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. Michael Gallup, another player coming off of a rehab from an injury, 2.4 versus 2.7. Here's where it gets interesting, Joe. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'm going to take the board off. I want to see your reaction to these on YouTube. Amari Cooper.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that.
2.5 for Amari versus 2.7 for Courtland Sutton. Terry McLaurin.
Okay.
2.5 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. T. Higgins, 2.5 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. Rookie Drake London, top 10 pick, 2.5 as well. Mike Evans, 2.6 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. Jamar Chase, 2.6 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7. And Garrett Wilson, 2.6 versus Courtland Sutton's 2.7 average yards of separation per target.
I think you have proven a point here, sir.
And his average targeted air yards downfield is 12. Well, that's a top 20 number in the NFL amongst qualifying players. Now, it's not that of Buffalo Bills legend Gabe Davis at almost 19 or 16 yards downfield average air yards per target. But this is a down the field target player who's getting sufficient separation and getting out separation versus some players that you have seen a lot of success with that I think if Courtland had better quarterback play, it would probably be better reflective of.
All right. Put the blue on him and let's move on.
Okay, that's it. That's all the consensus we need to come to. It's all the players. I'll put the board back up. Any parting thoughts on the Denver Broncos?
Well, so we got to do the thing where I'm going to ask you, Kyle, is the Denver Broncos roster a better team right now than it was coming out of 2022?
Yes. I think the young guys in the secondary and in your pass rush group having another year of experience is helpful. I think the offensive line is better. I think the remade tight end room is better. You're healthier on the offensive side of the ball. And you have better coaching, which is not tied to the roster, but nevertheless is going to be very important for the Broncos. So I'll say yes.
Well, but what did they lose? I mean, they lost Draymond Jones. What are the big subtractions here?
Draymond Jones, Dalton Risner, Melvin Gordon.
Who cares? I'd rather have some Ajay P. Ryan.
Right. I mean, that
they're healthy. They're better coached.
Oh, like Ron Darby.
Yeah. This is a better football team than it was last year.
I agree. Now they need a kicker.
Yeah, they literally don't have one at all. Okay, I don't understand that trade at all, right? Riley Patterson's a perfectly good kicker for the Jaguars last year, right? Like a young,
right.
Reasonably good kicker, 2 years of it too.
Right.
They trade for Brandon McManus and send Patterson to the Lions?
Yeah.
What happened there?
I don't know.
How does something like that go down?
I don't know.
What I mean?
I don't know. We'll find out.
They said, you know what? We'll figure it out a kicker.
Yeah, we'll just bring a bunch of guys in.
Yeah,
we'll do the Matt Nagy. We'll do the Matt Nagy thing, and just bring 10 guys in for tryouts in camp and put every one of them and have them kick the field goal that our kicker missed last year in the playoffs. It cost us a game.
Don't mess. You got a kicker. Don't mess around with that. You know.
Right. Yeah. Ain't broke. Don't fix it with kickers. Right.
The whole thing.
All right. We're out of here. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino. We're the Draft Dudes. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. We hope you enjoyed this conversation on the Denver Broncos. We're going to start steamrolling these teams. We're getting close to halfway through the league. We're going to put pedal to the metal. Packers tomorrow.
Packers.
That could be a good one. So hit subscribe. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We hope to see you then. Thanks for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your Tuesday. See you tomorrow. Peace.